There's a lot of streaming services out there, each filled with reality TV, comedy, drama, and of course, superheroes. But there's one dedicated entirely to nonfiction TV and documentary films, and that's Curiosity Stream. History, science, nature, we've got it. Space, dinosaurs, big cats, we've got that too. And pretty much anything else you want to explore. Go ahead, add some smart TV to your smart TV with Curiosity Stream. Go to curiositystream.com to sign up and start streaming today.
How is your mental health? Billie Eilish, Kevin Love of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Imagine Dragons, Lil Nas X, and so many more feel the same pressures we do. They're joining our host, Carson Daly, for I'm Listening, September 23rd, starting at 6 p.m. right here. Carson and a cast of mental health experts, athletes, musicians, other notables, and you will share stories, insights, and help us all remember that we are not alone. Please join us, because talking about our mental health has the power to save lives. For more, visit imlistening.org.
Oh, man. Team USA goes down in their opener. Craig Hoffman with you on 106.7 The Fan. I wish I had more insight and analysis on this because I've been on the air and haven't been able to really watching commercial breaks. Team USA looked like they had started to pull away a little bit. France closed the gap, and next thing I know, it is an 83-76 final for Team USA this morning. Or I guess it's this afternoon, this evening in Tokyo. But Kevin Durant in foul trouble basically the entire game. Just an abysmal second half. Now as I look at the numbers here, they might only score like 30 points in the second half. That's terrible. So maybe we'll get someone on a little later in the show to talk about that. But this team lost, you remember, their first two qualifying matches, or first two warm-up matches as well. You have Drew Holiday, Devin Booker, Chris Middleton coming off the finals. Holiday was fantastic in this game. Really the reason that they were in it for a lot of the night. I think he had like 27 and 4 or something like that. Let me try to pull up a box score here real quick. Box score for Team USA. This literally just went final. 28 points for Evan Fournier for France, obviously NBA player. Nicola Batum had 5. Nando De Colo had 13. Gobert had 14 and 9. As for Team USA, Holiday had 18 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal. Jason Tatum, only 9 points. Kevin Durant, only 10 points. 4 of 12 from the field, 1 of 6 shooting. This team is obviously not going to win a lot of games. He fouled out with Kevin Durant being that bad from the field. Lillard, just 11 points on 3 of 10. Bam Adebayo winds up being the highest scoring starter, 12 points on 5 of 8 shooting. Missed 2 big free throws on the fourth quarter, 2 of 4 from the line. He did have 10 rebounds. Jeez. Just a disastrous performance so far. And like, I guess the question we need to start asking is, like, is this team just not that good? Is it possible that a team with Draymond Green, Bam Adebayo, Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant, Keldon Johnson, Jason Tatum, Chris Middleton, JaVale McGee, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, and Jeremy Grant. Grant, by the way, did not even play in this game. Is it not that good? Like, we got spoiled from 08 on. Let's be real about that. And this team has a very 2004 feel to it. The 04 team, everyone thinks like, oh, they just weren't that good. Like, no. The 04 team, they didn't take it seriously, was part of the problem. They got together like 3 days before the Olympics, tried to cram it together, and you had guys like Allen Iverson, you had guys like Tim Duncan, obviously LeBron and Carmelo didn't even play for that team. They were on the bench, but young guys who basically didn't get minutes. Stephon Marbury, like, you had all-star after all-star, and you had Tim Duncan, who was one of the best 3 players in the world at the time. But they didn't have a cohesive unit, and ultimately it didn't work out. And you just wonder, like, without Steph Curry, without LeBron, without Carmelo, without these guys that have the experience in the international game and are really good international high-level team players, can they do it? Now, I thought this team had plenty of those guys. A guy like Draymond, guys like Bam Adebayo, they should fit. Obviously, Durant should fit on any team. Holiday, Middleton, those guys should fit. But maybe they just don't have enough. And should they still win gold? Yeah. Are they probably going to be fine? Make it out of group play, get in the tournament? Very possible. But this team is missing Bradley Beal. And a lot of the top players are not playing at all. You know, guys like Curry, LeBron, who just wanted time off after this long season. And not to mention, obviously they have a higher percent of actual NBA players. This team is entirely from the NBA, where guys, you know, even from, like, say, the French players, they've been done for a hot second. Batum, Gobert, Fournier. These are guys that got eliminated from eliminated from the playoffs a while ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, or didn't make the playoffs and were done almost 3 months ago. And they also don't have the burden that a lot of these other NBA or a lot of these other stars have on their NBA teams, right? Like, none of the dudes for France, closest one would be Gobert, have the offensive and defensive burden of being the guy, where almost every player on Team USA has that burden or just played in the finals. Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton have Giannis in Milwaukee, but they just got done playing. Obviously, Booker does. Like Durant, huge burden. Lillard, huge burden. LaVine, huge burden. Adebayo, key to everything Miami does. Draymond, huge burden, even if he's got Steph. So, I don't know. That just sounds like an excuse. Honestly, like, they should win every game. They're the best team. But it's also, we'll get back to some of the Wiz and Beal trade rumor stuff a little bit later in the show, because this just happened. But this actually brings me to something else, too, that I did want to talk about in regards to Giannis, which we'll get into next. And whether it's Giannis or whether it's a result like this, like the USA's run as the dominant basketball force we knew it was coming to an end. The trend has been going for a while, but it's over. Craig Hoffman with you on 106.7 The Fan.
There's a lot of streaming services out there, each filled with reality TV, comedy, drama, and of course, superheroes. But there's one dedicated entirely to nonfiction TV and documentary films, and that's Curiosity Stream. History, science, nature, we've got it. Space, dinosaurs, big cats, we've got that too. And pretty much anything else you want to explore. Go ahead, add some smart TV to your smart TV with Curiosity Stream. Go to curiositystream.com to sign up and start streaming today.
You want to know what Wagertainment is? It's the picks, the analysis, the information, mixed with the laughter and the entertainment. Smart sports betting content that'll put a smile on your face.
The BetQL Network, streaming live each day and helping you bet smarter.
If you're a sports fan, you know why you should listen. It's sports betting content without the BS. No hot takes, no nonsense.
The BetQL Network, streaming live right now on Odyssey.
Sports, bets, and entertainment.
On Odyssey's going back to school, and we've got all the supplies you need, like A-plus exclusive music stations and podcasts to help you or your student excel. Wake up and get the school day started with Acoustic Sunrise, the best mix of acoustic pop. Hit the books with Classical Odyssey, passionate classical music to help you focus while you study. Listen to essential school podcasts like Grammar Girl's Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing, and be inspired with TED Talks Daily. Get back to school with new exclusive stations, plus all your favorite local radio stations and podcasts on Odyssey.
Team USA loses to France in men's basketball to open their Olympic Games. And it's a sign that the dominance of USA basketball that started in 1992 and has almost continued unencumbered to now is over. Craig Hoffman with you on 106.7 The Fan. We're talking baseball. What should the Nats do with Max Scherzer? Coming up in 13 minutes with Kevin Brown. But I just tweeted this at Craig Hoffman. Feel free to follow along there, but you'll get the extended version here because this is the radio and I don't have a character limit, and they pay me for this. They don't pay me to tweet. That'd be sweet. They paid me to tweet. I'd tweet so much. They don't pay me to tweet. So the USA is still the best, we're still the best basketball nation in the world. Bar none. We have and especially when it comes to depth, right? We have way more great players than everybody else. Way more. This is like our B or C team, and we still should win Olympic gold. However, the idea that we can dominate, not be the best, but be dominant, is over. The best player in the world right now is Greek. That is the first time in the history of the world. Now, basketball's history is not quite that long, but the history of the game, that the best player in the world is not American. The closest we've come to this was in 94-95 when MJ retired and Hakeem Olajuwon was probably the best player in the world. But let's be real. Michael Jordan was still the best player in the world. It's just that he was playing baseball at the time. But legitimately right now, can you say that Kevin Durant is better than Giannis Antetokounmpo? You could, and you not be like, I'm not going to be like, you're crazy. But me saying that Giannis is better, I can't be crazy either. He's a two-time MVP who just had back-to-back 40-point finals games, scored then after a quote-unquote off game, in which he had 30-something, I believe, he scored 50 to win the finals. Won finals MVP, he's 26. And unlike Durant, I mean, this is partially because of age, but this is how the world works. If it was just who's the best player that's alive on the planet right now, it'd still be MJ or it'd be LeBron. But right now, currently, it's Giannis. Because his availability is higher than Durant's. You can't rely on Kevin Durant. And also, I realize it happened by an inch. That shot Durant hit against Milwaukee when he was with Brooklyn, that was nuts. And if his foot is behind the line, who knows? Maybe we're talking about Durant coming off the finals. But we're not. We live in the world that happened, not in the world that could. Giannis is the best player in the world. The heir apparent to that title is Slovenian. There's a lot of really good young American players, whether it be Devin Booker, whether it be Trae Young, whether it would be Jason Tatum. All these dudes are great. I think Luka's better than all of them. That's my personal... It's a hot take. It's not even a hot take. It's just a take. Right? And I think sometimes when we say someone's the best, that's an implication that everyone else stinks. It's not. Like Zion's great. He could be the best young player in a couple. Like we could look up in a couple years and be like, nope, we were wrong. It wasn't Luka. It was this guy. But right now, it certainly seems that Luka Doncic, who won MVP of the second best league in the world at the age of 17, got drafted, came over here, immediately was awesome, has only gotten better, and looks like at 22, 23? I don't even know if he's that old. Is he still 21? How old is Luka? Luka Doncic is currently 22 years old. He's a February 28th, 1999 baby. So he will turn 23 in February of next year. By the way, they, being Slovenia, plays against Argentina overnight tonight, 12:40 a.m. live in men's tournament Group C action. But from his passing and rebounding ability to his obvious ability to score, a jump shot that I think will continue to get better over time and more consistent, and that his just brute strength and ability to get to the rim, if he can, that strength does benefit him on the defensive end, and I think he will probably continue to get better on that side of the floor, in part because he's so damn smart. I think Luka's the guy next. And so, when you talk about what Team USA has been, yes, if you have the 08 or the 12 team with LeBron, Kobe, obviously in 12 you had Durant, Harden, Westbrook. The 08 team, you had Wade. Carmelo was on both of those teams. And you truly send your best. Then yeah, the USA is going to win. And frankly, they should win with this team. Because the best player in the Olympics is still Kevin Durant. Giannis ain't here. Neither is LeBron. Those are the only two guys I will put on that level. So you got the best player. Lillard might be the second best player. Him or Luka, with where they're at right now. You have a terrific, unbelievable, and experienced defensive player in Draymond. You have a guy who's like maybe even a better version of him ultimately in Bam Adebayo. Like you have Jason Tatum, elite scorer. You have all the pieces. The one thing that's an interesting sidebar to all this is the coaching. Greg Popovich is as good as you've had in NBA history. 5 titles, 50 wins every year. But Pop, his international history is not good. He was on the 2004 staff under Larry Brown, who he learned from. He, as he's taken over this team, did not win the World Championships a couple years ago. He lost to Spain. Or Spain was ultimately the champion. So, whether it's for whatever reason, Pop, Steve Kerr, Jay Wright, this staff, Lloyd Pierce, not able to get the most out of this group, whether it is the group themselves not being good enough and not having some of our best, because it's not just like LeBron and Steph, it's Anthony Davis, right? For multiple-time Olympian. Having these guys would be a game changer. Bradley Beal, had he been able to follow through. Klay Thompson, if he was available. These are all better options than some of the guys that are on this team. But I think just focusing on the U.S. is missing the larger point that the game is better for what it is right now on a global scale. And this process started with the Dream Team. It started in 92, inspiring a group or inspiring kids around the world. You had guys like Dirk come through. You had guys like Arvydas Sabonis eventually cross over into the NBA. Obviously now his kid, Demonis, is in the league. We're just looking at a better global basketball pool where you have multiple countries with multiple NBA players, and the other leagues in the world are better. I saw Bomani Jones get in a quick back and forth with someone, or quote tweet someone who said, I would love to just see a college all-star team. And Bomani absolutely correctly said they would get smashed. A group of 19-year-old American kids absolutely would not be able to compete with the likes of France, Nigeria, Argentina, Slovenia. These are grown men who are professionals all over at high levels. And that's all right. It just means we're going to lose more. And so, again, that's not to say we're not still the best team in the world. It's not to say we are not the best basketball country in the world. And we're still years, decades, if ever, just based off geopolitics. Like, we have 300 million people. So unless China ups their game tremendously, where they got 1 billion, or India with 1 billion somehow can find 12 that are better than our 12, like, we're going to keep being the best. But the idea that we're going to be as dominant as we have been, not just in 92 and 96, but we're only Spain or only one or two other teams can compete like it was in 08 and 12, those days are done. And we should have known it by how the NBA is turning, but it becomes even more obvious this morning as Team USA loses to France. Again, this is group play. They'll probably be fine, but we'll see. Coming up next, what should the Nats do with the trade deadline? What is the latest with them as they wrap up their series with the Orioles? We head to Baltimore, talk to Kevin Brown. Next, Craig Hoffman with you on The Fan. Talking Nationals and baseball as a whole, Kevin Brown, play-by-play for the Baltimore Orioles, does some radio, does some TV. He's also a dear friend who I've known for like a decade because we're old now. Good morning, Kevin.
Wow, way to bring the mood immediately down, Greg. I consider myself to be very young and spry, but thank you for just knocking down my confidence right off the top.
We can be old and spry. That's allowed.
No. You can be old and spry. You frame it however you want. Okay. I feel young. I feel vivacious. I feel potentially ready to call a Baltimore Orioles sweep at home, which I've never done in my 3 years. It's a glorious day.
Have you really not? Have they had them and you've just not been on the call?
No, the Orioles have only swept, this is my third year here, they've only swept one home series. It was last year against Tampa Bay, and I was not on the call for it.
Okay, so it's not like you've missed 7 of them. You've missed one in 3 years.
That's right.
That's remarkable. Well, obviously our audience is mostly interested in the Nationals side of things. So what have you seen? Like, Washington comes into this series needing to kickstart. They hit a skid before the break. It has not been good. They at some points this year have gotten really hot, been towards the top of the division. Like, when you watch the Washington Nationals play baseball now, as someone who's not watching them every day but is watching baseball every day, like, what do you see out of this team and why they have floundered firmly into mediocrity?
I mean, it's a bad lineup. And I will say this, by the way. I know I'm the Orioles broadcaster, but the Nats, I think I've been on the show before. The Nats are an organization I grew up in. I did 7 years of AAA ball. I filled in on some games in 17. So even though there's a Beltway rivalry, the Nats are always going to hold a place in my heart. I always try to keep tabs on them and how they're doing. So I just see a team that looks pretty sluggish offensively. Obviously, this is a dub, but losing Kyle Schwarber is crushing. From a baseball standpoint only, it's hurt to lose Starlin Castro. If the allegations about him are true, then I'm glad that Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez have been as strong as they've been, saying basically he'll never play again. But I just look at this lineup, and once you get past Turner and Soto, and then Josh Bell to an extent, nobody scares anybody. I mean, this has not been a good Orioles pitching staff this year. They pitched very well since the break, but you're just not intimidated no matter who the Orioles throw out there by the 5 through 9 in this lineup. Ryan Zimmerman, amazing career. It looks like it's basically over. The catching core right now with Yan Gomes on the shelf is not particularly scary. I just don't see the depth in this team. You look at the Nats a couple of years ago, and maybe it wasn't all big boppers past Turner and Rendon and Soto, but it was guys that put together good at-bats, guys that maybe struck out a lot but hit for power, or maybe they didn't hit for power but put the ball in play a lot. And there's just not a lot of depth to this lineup. It's not a very scary pitching staff. I mean, think about the margins of error when the Nats won the World Series in 2019. They basically won it with 2.5 relievers, and Patrick Corbin was the half, and he was also starting. So the margins were a little thin back then, and the fact that you don't have Schwarber and you don't have Strasburg now, and you're down a couple of key arms, I think the fragility of the lack of depth here has now been exposed.
When you watch opposing pitchers, and obviously you've seen it up close in this series, like, can you see that with how pitchers are approaching those top 2 guys, or top 2.5 guys, if you want to count Bell, versus how they pitch the rest of the lineup? Is it kind of like, hey, let's pitch around these 2, deep breath, okay, let's go get them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's honestly, the Orioles pitchers have gone after Juan Soto more than I thought they would, and I think they've mainly gotten him out inside. He still has rolled the ball over more than the Nats would like. I know the ground ball rate has gone down in the second half, but I think he's grounded out 4 times in this series, all to the right side of the field. So, by and large, I've seen Oriole pitchers attack inside, which they've not always done successfully this year. And when Soto got the ball out over the plate yesterday against Adam Plutko, he did what he does and hit a home run to left field. But Josh Bell got a fastball from Jorge Lopez. He hit it 440-something feet on Friday night, and maybe he's seen 3 fastballs since. I mean, you look at Josh Bell's slugging percentage against fastballs, one of the best in baseball, and Matt Harvey yesterday, curveball, changeup, curveball. I mean, they've attacked him off speed, and they have not been scared to throw off-speed pitches, knowing what they know. So I've seen them be a little less cautious than I thought they would with Soto, and have a lot more success than I imagined they would. He only has a home run and a walk in 2 games in the series, ground outs, and then some pretty harmless flyouts. But the Orioles this year have struggled to pitch in. A lot of young pitchers. I think a little bit tentative throwing the ball inside. Don't want to get beat out over the plate, but they've done that very well in this series to Soto.
Kevin Brown, Orioles play-by-play broadcaster, formerly called minor league games in the Nationals organization, with us here on The Fan. I'm Craig Hoffman with you on this Sunday morning. A guy that I know you called some games for when you were in the organization is Eric Fetty. What have you made of him? He had a good outing the other night, but the Nats lost to the Marlins in extra innings. What have you seen when you've watched Fetty compared to what you thought you'd see when you were calling his games in the minors?
You know, when I was calling his games in the minors, I think there was there are a couple of players, and Fetty was one of them, that came to the team with a lot of hype, and there was a lot of chatter surrounding Eric Fetty. And at least when I was in Syracuse, and I know this is no disrespect to him necessarily, but I thought, well, I don't know if this is the number 1 starter I was led to believe, or the potential top-of-the-rotation guy. And I think part of that is that the Nats, in my time there, didn't have a great minor league system. A couple of big pieces, sure. Soto, obviously. I know Victor Robles is kind of on the skids now, but has had some nice seasons with the Nats. Trey Turner wasn't drafted by the Nats, but pretty quickly into the organization. So some big names, yes, but there hasn't been a lot of depth. And so Fetty was one of a few players that we'd see in AAA with a lot of hype behind him. And then I think the lack of depth in the system may have contributed to a little bit of an overhyping. You know, Pedro Severino's part of the Orioles right now. This is his 3rd year here. And Severino's starting to turn it around, but by and large, it has not been a good defensive few years for Severino. And when I was working with Syracuse, when the Nats were still affiliated with Syracuse, it was, well, wait for Severino. He's going to be the best defensive catcher in the system. And he's this great defensive catcher. And then we never really saw it. I think it's just because there wasn't a great defensive catcher in the system, but people like to write about the best prospects in the system. And when the system is down as a whole, I think the top guys get a little bit of outsized love. That being said, I haven't seen Fedde much this year, but I've been impressed when I have seen him. And I think, honestly, the stuff has been a little bit crisper than it was in AAA. It's still about command and fastball command for me. And, again, can he attack hitters both inside and out with it? We're not going to see him in a series, which I'm a little bummed about. I'd love to see him personally. And I haven't called one of his games in person probably in 4 years now. So I'd like to see if the crispness plays in person. Instead, we're going to see Paolo Espino, who I also saw at Syracuse 5 years ago and did not necessarily think would be having the major league career that he's having, but I'm quite delighted for him all the same.
So you mentioned the lack of depth in the system, which leads me to the last thing I'll ask you about, and that is the trade deadline. If you were the Washington Nationals and Mike Rizzo at the trade deadline, he was quoted the other day saying, we're going to take a dual path, whatever the hell that means. Obviously, Scherzer is potentially available in the final year of his deal. What would you be doing if you were Mike Rizzo and possibly trying to restock the system or, trying to make your team better for this year? What are you doing if you're Rizzo?
If I was Mike Rizzo, and let me preface by saying this, Mike Rizzo's done an amazing job, and Mike Rizzo is a heck of a lot better GM than me with zero GM experience. But
that's not the question, Kevin. I asked if you were Mike Rizzo.
That's why I just preamble. If I was Mike Rizzo, I'd sell 100%. This team is not going to the postseason. And I think these 2 days have sealed the Nationals' fate. Not only because they lost the 2 games and they're going to lose the series to the Orioles and maybe get swept. John Means starts for the Orioles, their best starter today, but because wrapped into these couple of days, yet another Steven Strasburg setback. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be any Steven Strasburg in 2022 for the Nats. So the hope was, well, let's linger. Maybe we can beat the Orioles for a couple of games. And then even if we don't go out and make major additions, we get Schwarber back soon, we get Strasburg back soon. Latter of those is not happening now. So you're not going to get Strasburg. What does this team need to get to push over Philly, over Atlanta, and over the Mets? And they're now 7 games back of the Mets. They need a lot. They need, in my estimation, 1 to 2 starters, 2 relievers. They could use an infielder in a pretty major way. I think they could use, they could use a lot. I don't know how many positions to go through. Really, they could use a lot. Like they
need a new team. That's the whole problem.
Maybe their catching woes will be resolved shortly, but there's not enough here. I don't see this team getting hot enough to surpass 3 teams. I know it's been a mediocre National League East, but I just don't see it. I mean, the offensive numbers are good, but those are good numbers with Schwarber and with Castro and with Gomes. And even if you get Schwarber and Gomes back, you're not getting Strasburg back this year. I don't think the rotation is deep enough. I don't think the bullpen is good enough. And 7 games is a long way to go right now. So I think the Nats should sell. I think they should absolutely explore a Max Scherzer trade. I think they should absolutely explore Brad Hand and Daniel Hudson's return because every contending team, except maybe the Rays, really needs relief help. I think they should explore if they can get anything for a guy like maybe Josh Harrison. Could be a valuable utility piece to some teams. I don't think there's much of a market for Josh Bell. First base is not a major position in need, but, again, it's malpractice if you're not listening to guys. But Mike Rizzo is a very pragmatic and realistic guy. He knows that even if he trades Max Scherzer now, there's still a chance he could sign Max Scherzer again after this offseason. And I think the Nats have to be honest with themselves. They are not going to the postseason this year. Sitting back on your assets, I think, is not worth it. This is not a team that can engage in a full-scale rebuild because you have maybe the most transcendent talent in the National League, neck and neck with Fernando Tatis Jr. and Soto. So you're not going to tear it all down when Soto's there and when Turner's there, because you have, as a baseline, two potentially generational stars. But I think you can rebuild on the fly, and I think you can get some assets for what has been a farm system that for a long time has not been very good. And I think if they didn't do that and they said, we think we can get back in the race, I think they would honestly be fooling themselves.
Last thing to kind of follow up on that real quick, because I'm over the clock. I'm murdering the clock here, but it's worth it because this is good. Because you brought up something that I think is important to point out here, because I think it's kind of a no-brainer. They're not going to make the postseason. The Strasburg thing's a disaster. Even just I'm scrolling through the Washington Post's national section, and the Jesse Doherty's story has this great little blurb of Steven Strasburg, who has pitched less than 30 innings since signing a 7-year, $245 million contract.
2/3 in 2 years or something like that.
It's ridiculous. So you have all of that. But if you sell, it's not just necessarily a this-year thing, right? You restock the farm system so that you can, quote-unquote, rebuild for the future, but this is a team that's going to want to be competitive next year. So, how good, if we're saying, all right, punting on this season, in a minute or less, how good are the Nationals set up for next year anyway? How long is the process here?
I mean, let's assume Strasburg's health next year. I know it's dangerous to do, but let's assume with a full offseason he's good. You go into the year with Turner, Soto, and Strasburg. That's a really, really, really good top three. But they're not set up in a great way because they have a lot of players who are under contract only through this year or next year. They can use the players in a big way. Think about the Yankees in 2016. The Yankees didn't sell everybody, but they traded Andrew Miller. They traded Aroldis Chapman. They got assets. They got Gleyber Torres back from the Cubs. Then they re-signed Chapman. They were in the ALCS the next year. The Nationals, I think, should take a Yankees 2016 approach. Sell some of the pieces you have, but with an eye towards still being competitive next year, just replenishing what you have, because they are in dire need of some kind of supplements.
All right, if people would like to hear / see your call of the game today, where do they go?
We're on Masson. Our good friends Bob and FP are on Masson 2. But we'll be on the Masson TV side, and it's a shame that we won't have Bob and FP and Dave and Charlie in the stadium with us, even though we're 45 minutes or so down the road. But we will be on Masson along with the Hall of Famer Jim Palmer.
Excellent. Everybody watch if you're watching today. Just for variety's sake, no slight to Bob and FP. Watch Kevin because he came on the radio, and we appreciate it.
Full slight to Bob and FP. The hell with them.
Yeah, to hell with them. Kevin Brown, everybody, from Masson and occasionally the Orioles Radio Network as well. And he's a dear friend who's young, vivacious, and spry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig.
Kevin Brown on the BetQL guest line. Matt Wyrick there talking Nats coming up at this point 40 minutes from now because I kept Kevin for 20 minutes. That was great. Much appreciate his time. We'll quickly wrap up some thoughts on that and then continue moving into some Washington football and the Bradley Beal trade rumors in the next hour here on The Fan. The Nats, this has been the thing with, I don't know, baseball's always funny with trades, and especially this time of year, right? We're about to enter silly season. We're about to enter in the NBA too, which is what we're going to talk about next. But you have guys like Lucas Giolito a couple years ago, guys like Eric Fetty, who wind up being in every major trade rumor, every trade deadline. And it's we have to protect them. They're the future. And then it seems like at least half the time these dudes don't pan out. And then all of a sudden you make a couple of trades or they graduate up and then you look down and you're like, well, shoot, where'd they all go? And that's apparently where the Nats are right now. Is they just have a minor league system that doesn't have, a lot of the names that we've talked about forever, guys whose peak value may have been as prospects, not as players, because that's how that works. They don't always all pan out. But guys like Robles, guys like Fetty, Carter Keyboom, right? They're up. If those dudes are all playing to what we thought they were capable of, then we're having a different conversation about the Nationals. The problem is they're not. The fact that as we talk about the good players that the Nationals are trying to build around for the future, that Kevin mentions Robles as a not kind of part of that conversation, that he comes up in a different part of the conversation, is telling in itself. And so if you're Mike Rizzo and the Nats, I would absolutely be exploring these trade opportunities to try to get a good young player who is going to be not just like single A caliber good and maybe is good in 5 years, but a guy who is crushing double or triple A and might be ready to help you next year. We'll talk about that more with Matt Wyrick coming up at 11:30. But coming up next, trades, silly season of a different type. Bradley Beal, is he going to be staying in Washington long term? What should the Wizards be looking for in return? That's next. Craig Hoffman with you on The Fan.
I'm Erin Ryan, political commentator, comedy writer, and host of Crooked Media's Hysteria.
And I'm co-host Alyssa Mastromonaco, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff for President Obama.
Each week on Hysteria, we are joined by a team of hilariously opinionated ladies to discuss the headlines from the serious to the absurd.
We cover everything from reproductive rights to rom-coms and break down the political news of the week and cultural stories that affect women's lives.
New episodes of Hysteria drop every Thursday. Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
There's a lot of streaming services out there, each filled with reality TV, comedy, drama, and of course, superheroes. But there's one dedicated entirely to nonfiction TV and documentary films, and that's Curiosity Stream. History, science, nature, we've got it. Space, dinosaurs, big cats, we've got that too. And pretty much anything else you want to explore. Go ahead, add some smart TV to your smart TV with Curiosity Stream. Go to curiositystream.com to sign up and start streaming today.